Super Carlin Brothers is sponsored by BetterHelp. We've all had that epic rideshare experience, right? Like halfway through, you're best friends and they know your aspirations to go find yourself in Portugal. It's human. We're all looking for someone to listen. But not everyone is equipped to help. See why BetterHelp has a 4.9 rating out of 1.7 million client session reviews. Visit betterhelp.com/super for 10% off your first month. How does Dumbledore always know what's going on?
By a happy mistake, I arrived at the ministry 3 hours early.
Hey, brother! Y'all, communication in the wizarding world is all over the place. We've got owls, flue powder, enchanted mirrors, patronuses, even good old-fashioned gossip.
I always knew he'd do well.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it gets intercepted by a cat-loving toad woman. Sometimes Harry just forgets that he has a literal magic mirror walkie-talkie in his pocket, and that one would have been massively useful on so many occasions if Harry just, like, you know, opened it. It does end up being useful at Malfoy Manor by means of
sheer dumb luck.
And it ends up being like one of the best puns in the entire wizarding world. Like, you know, like Black Mirror, that's like what our phones are. They're like, there's a whole show. You get it.
Come on, make sure
A Christmas toast.
But then there's Dumbledore, who somehow always seems to know everything inside and outside the castle. He's a funny man, Dumbledore. I think he sort of wanted to give me a chance. I think he knows more or less everything that goes on here. You know, I reckon he had a pretty good idea we were going to try, and instead of stopping us, he taught us just enough to help. Now, I think a huge amount of intuition, intelligence, and personal experience goes a long way towards how Dumbledore knows just so much. It's like the classic, like, mom always knows when you're lying because, like, she did the same things when she was a kid, so, like, you know, you're just pulling tricks that she's fully familiar with, but, like, you're kind of new to the equation, so you don't know that they're, like, well, like, treaded tricks, and, you know, it's pretty obvious. Mom, I sleep better in the basement, and also there's a door to the backyard that allows me to go through the fence so I can get to my car and I can start it without turning on the headlight so you don't see it from your bedroom when I leave in the middle of the night. The joke is that she knows that you're lying and she doesn't care because she supports your rebellious spirit, probably. And if not, Mom, I'm sorry that I did that. But it's also possible that he's invented his own method of keeping tabs on the greater wizarding world that is so simple it seems like it could never work, and yet it also feels remarkably on brand for him. So today we try to discover whether Dumbledore is able to use his own portrait on chocolate frog cards to gain intel from the greater wizarding world. Yo, we gotta take a brief pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Chubbies. Now all I can say is thirst trap warning inbound. Because boy howdy gang, when we heard Chubbies wanted to come on board to sponsor the show, I couldn't green light it fast enough. We love these things and have worn them for years. Lake trips, beach trips, river floats. Chubbies has been a baked-in part of my summer repertoire for water-based activities for years. But also, I'm just like, you know, wearing them right now. So if you want to stand out poolside, easy peasy. If you want to be comfortable day in, day out, boom bam, they've got you covered there too. They're comfy, they're casual, and built for life. The Chubbies original stretch shorts can live on your legs, available in long, short, and way short. They come in a relaxed fit, elastic waistband, and no fuss design. These are the kinds of shorts you'll forget you're even wearing until you get the onslaught of high fives and compliments. Looking great, man! Honestly, I can never believe just how much feedback I get whenever I wear these. They're insane comfortable and come in amazing patterns and just simply work. So whether you're suiting up for cannonballs, cookouts, or casual Fridays, Chubbies has you covered. For a limited time, Chubbies is giving our listeners $10 off your order with our code SUPER at chubbyshorts.com. That's code SUPER at chubbyshorts.com. Support our show and let them know that we sent you. Give summer one last hurrah and keep the good vibes going with Chubbies. Okay, so lately we've been receiving tons of messages about this very question, and we've seen it float around throughout the year, so today we wanted to really put it to the test. Is Dumbledore using chocolate frog cards to spy on the wizarding world, or at least communicate with his colleagues? The basic concept is what we see in later installments of the series, when we learn that portraits of the same person in different locations can travel from one portrait of themselves to another, exchange information about what they've seen or heard in one place or another.
It's him, Headmaster. The one they all talk about. He's here, somewhere in the castle. Sirius Black!
And sure enough, the first thing that happens when Harry opens his first ever chocolate frog card, which is of course Dumbledore, is that he disappears.
Hey, he's gone. Well, you can't expect him to run around all day, can you?
In some ways, what this is doing is introducing to us how portraits work in the wizarding world. But if it operates like other portraits, then it's entirely possible that where he went was to the headmaster himself to let him know that Harry is in fact on the Hogwarts Express. He made it safely. Intel that one way or another, I suspect Dumbledore wants to know.
Forgive me. I was merely being curious.
And despite what Ron says, I think you can expect him to hang around all day. Because, for one, unlike the portraits at Hogwarts, the chocolate frog card depicts Dumbledore in photograph form, according to Harry. But in, the Muggle world, people just stay put in photos. Now, here's the thing. Portraits and photos in the wizarding world aren't the same. Portraits can wander between frames, gossip with each other, and generally pass along information. Photos are totally different. They can wave, they can hide behind the frame, but they can't talk back, and they definitely can't leave. Like when Harry sees himself in Lockhart's photo. He was pleased to see that his photographic self was putting up a good fight and refusing to be dragged into view. You see what I mean? He can hide from view, but not leave. And perhaps more importantly, while Harry is pleased with his photographic self, he doesn't have any control or awareness over it. At best, what it's really doing here is taking into account how the real Harry actually felt in that moment, in a cool way that almost provides context for photos that we could probably use out here in the real world. And yet, Dumbledore's chocolate frog card photo does leave. That's weird. It makes his card behave less like a photo and way more like a portrait, which reeks of Dumbledore trickery, which means it could be moving between cards, carrying messages, maybe even checking in with Dumbledore himself, thus explaining this concern. They reported that he'd been voted out of the chairmanship of the International Confederation of Wizards because he's getting old and losing his grip. But it's not true. He was voted out of the Ministry of Wizards after he made a speech announcing Voldemort's return. They've demoted him from Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot, that's the Wizard High Council, and they're talking about taking away his Order of Merlin, first class too. But Dumbledore says he doesn't care what they do as long as they don't take him off the chocolate frog cards, said Bill, grinning. Bill jokes that Dumbledore doesn't care about losing his titles and honorifics. Just don't take him off the chocolate frog cards. Classic Dumbledore, am I right? On the surface, it's kind of like a gag, but if the cards are his secret intel network, then that grin says Bill knows more than he's letting on. And I agree, it might feel a bit eavesdroppy, but it also would explain how Dumbledore always seems to be one step ahead of seemingly everyone. And it fits with another thing that we know that Dumbledore loves. Candy!
I could be safe with a nice toffee.
One of Dumbledore's quirks we all know and love is his sweet tooth. He literally uses candy as the password to the headmaster's office. Sherbet lemon, cockroach clusters, acid pops.
Alas. Earwax.
It feels whimsical, but it's actually brilliant, because the one person who might actually be a threat, Voldemort, would never think to guess candy. He dismisses anything simple, joyful, or childlike, as Dumbledore himself says. And his knowledge remained woefully incomplete, Harry. That which Voldemort does not value, he takes no trouble to comprehend. Of house elves and children's tales, of love, loyalty, and innocence. Voldemort knows nothing and understands nothing. Nothing. And what it actually reminds me of is the first start of year feast where Dumbledore announces, "Ah, music," he said, wiping his eyes, "a magic beyond all we do here." In that instance, Dumbledore is speaking warmly about the pleasures of music, but also music is literally the key to one piece of the puzzle that Voldemort can't figure out for the entire book. It's how to put Fluffy to sleep.
Just play him a bit of music and he falls straight to sleep. I shouldn't have told you that.
Candy falls into the same category of all these things. Compare that to Voldemort's own idea of a password. Dumbledore literally guesses it on the spot. Blood, if I'm not much mistaken. But then he also heals his hand like 2 seconds later. So blood, yeah, it's dark, menacing, sure, but also crude. Dumbledore's own word. So while Voldemort relies on intimidation, Dumbledore hides his greatest defenses behind sherbet lemons. And that same principle, it's exactly why chocolate frog cards would be the perfect covert communication tool. They're not only perfectly in keeping with the Dumbledore brand, but we also see other forms of communication that operate in a rather similar way. For example, Hermione's protean charm fake galleons that she uses to communicate with the DA. These are kind of hilarious too, because it starts with an idea created by Voldemort and his regime, the Dark Mark, which is adapted by Hermione and Dumbledore's army in the form of the coins, and then is further copied by Draco, who used the coins to communicate with Madame Rosmerta and Half-Blood Prince. Meaning, Voldemort's team, so to speak, is taking cues from Harry and co, who first took cues from him. It's just an endless loop of magical plagiarism. These are all tools used to communicate with one another. Dumbledore, on the other hand, if in fact this is what he's doing, is using the chocolate frog cards as a means of collecting intel. Basically, all on his own, something he'd value very highly. And it gets better, because we actually have proof of him using a very similar, if not slightly more crude version of this exact means of communication with his allies in Crimes of Grindelwald, a la this book. Oh, look at those photographs of others on different pages who can be summoned to communicate in real time. Photos of people who can leave the frame. The downside of this would be, of course, that it's pretty obvious what it is if you steal it, and it's pretty conspicuous for everyone to carry around. But chocolate frog card, heck, anyone could have a couple of those in their pocket at any time. I mean, you never know when you're gonna need some amphibious chocolate, you know? But that does bring us to a major question about the chocolate frog cards themselves, because as fun as this idea is, what would be stopping anyone else featured on the cards from pulling the same trick? Wouldn't these just end up being a massive liability? Wouldn't the secret just get out? Well, that's why I think there's one particularly important detail to address, and where being on a chocolate frog card might be a far bigger deal than we're giving it credit for. Namely because Dumbledore is still alive. In the books, there are only 10 witches and wizards ever named as being featured on chocolate frog cards. You've got Morgana, or Morgan Le Fay, Hengist of Woodcroft, Alberic Grunion, Circe, Paracelsus, Cleodana, Merlin, Cornelius Agrippa, and Albus Dumbledore. Of these, 9 are historical figures, at least within the wizarding world, and only 1 is alive, Dumbledore. And this sort of thing is actually somewhat common out here in the real world. For example, US currency doesn't feature images of living people, and up until 2011, it was the policy of the US Postal Service to do the same for their stamps. And actually, hilariously, I didn't even know about the 2011 rule change when writing this particular script, and the postage stamp detail was something that I knew from the book The Martian, where the world believes the main character, Mark Watney, to be dead on Mars, and they have to ultimately recall stamps featuring his image after they discover he's alive.
I'm still alive.
Because they don't print stamps of living people. And I was ultimately surprised that such a detail-oriented book would have missed this particular detail, but that book was published in 2011, so it was at least true when it went out into the world.
Surprise.
Long story long, was Dumbledore using chocolate frog cards as a secret method of communicating and or gathering intel from the wizarding world? I sure as heck think so. Y'all, as always, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Be sure to let me know all of your thoughts in the towel section down below. Also, don't forget that we are heading out on tour in just 2 weeks, hitting up the Midwest. So if you're looking to come and see us in person for a live show of our podcast through the Gryffindor, you can do so at all the links in the description down below. Otherwise, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future Harry Potter action from us. But otherwise, until next time, bye! Don't forget to eat cheese.